So thank you everyone for joining us. Today we have Roland Washington with us to give us some realities about the current times and his experiences and what are the lessons we can learn from his thoughtful messages. As usual, I respect Roland for his intelligence and his strategic thinking. But Roland, I know sometimes life, it takes us or gives us a break, and it gives us some time to think through what we've thought, and some of the thinking completely changes because of those experiences, and that's what makes us might be more experiential or intelligent, because we faced through some of the stuff. But Roland, to introduce you, really you're also working with mentorship as a strategic advisor. Among the many other roles or hats that you wear, you're also in the NIA organization, advocating for criminal justice reform. So Roland, thank you first of all. We are grateful that you're here. If you want to briefly introduce what I have missed about you, please go ahead.
No, that's fine. I'm glad to be here.
Great, thank you, Roland. So, Roland, I know we've been working together in many aspects, but tell us how has your last 3 or 4 months been, and briefly, and then I'll have other questions as well. But just we want to hear from you, where, what, how, when, why, and when.
Okay. Well, I am. I'm a COVID survivor, and I spent a total of 7 weeks in the hospital. I went to get tested the third week of April. I went online and tried to set it as an appointment. It was a partnership between CVS and Georgia Tech. I went online 3 times until it actually accepted my submittal for an appointment to be tested. It was well organized, right off the 17th Street exit, one of the Georgia Tech campus's parking decks. Long line of people, but very well organized. It took me no more than 15 minutes to meander through and make it to the checkpoint itself, the testing point itself. Quite contrastingly to what you hear reported now as to the time you hear the results. That's another discussion for another time, why it's taking so long now. But this was so organized such that we were swabbed and then parked on another section and waited for a cell phone call to let us know our results.
I mean, right then and there?
Right there.
Whoa, okay.
And the time that it took to me to respond to 2 emails, less than 10, 15 minutes, I got a call. And it said, Mr. Washington, you cannot leave. You've tested positive. Surprising moment. Within another 10 minutes, a gentleman came in full hazmat and gave me a folder, a little packet. On top of that packet, in big, bold red letters, it detailed, if your symptoms, go home, self-quarantine 7 to 14 days. I think it said 7 to 10 days, actually. And if, in fact, you feel any symptoms, do not go to emergency room. It said that. Call 911. Well, only 2 nights later, I started to struggle to breathe. Now, I should say for weeks before that, I mean for weeks, I'm asthmatic, not like I suffered with it as a child, but every now and then I'll have to take an over-the-counter pill and an antihistamine to kind of clear up and make it a little easier for me to breathe. Never a big problem. I've been feeling that for some time. Now, I was flying around still a lot, and not much different from how things flare up given the atmosphere and the histamines that are in the air around a certain period of time of the year. Didn't give much thought to it. This night, the breathing was happening. Now, also notice that I couldn't sleep. My appetite disappeared in the course of just 2 days.
Wow.
And I couldn't sleep. I didn't get sleepy at all.
Right.
So something strange as I was got in bed and did my normal meditation, something clearly was going on, strange in my body. So I called 911. It was in the middle of the night, about midnight or so, and they showed up with all sorts of vehicles. And then I went on to emergency room. They put me, of course, in a room primarily for the reason that they quote unquote my breathing levels were really low, Mr. Washington. So I thought, okay, no big deal. 2 days later, I started to cough up a little blood and went into AFib, and I was coughing hard, dry, hacking all night long.
Wow.
My breathing levels fell; they plummeted, and there was this, big arrangement of therapists and doctors who came to my room at daybreak. Next thing I know, I was being rushed to ICU to be put on a ventilator. People were whispering, and medical professionals were whispering in my ear, "You must call your family. You're about to be put on a ventilator." Some said, in all probability, you're about to be put on a ventilator. And now I'm noticing that despite them turning up their apparatus all the way to help me breathe, I was feeling like a person must feel when they're drowning. I was losing air. So it was a very
Wow.
frightening, sudden experience between rolling down the hall in an elevator and being rolled into ICU. So the ICU, when I got there, the ICU doctor in charge, I remember many of these names, but despite what I saw on the faces of those masked individuals helping me breathe, I got there, they put on another mask on top of the other breathing. And this doctor watched where he was watching the numbers, the vital numbers, very intently. And he looked into my eyes, Nazir, and he just said, "How do you feel?"
Right.
I said, "Well, I'm anxious right now because I don't know what all this means. Um, and I'm a little bit more anxious about being put on a ventilator." At that time, all we heard was ventilators. People don't come off of them alive. And nobody was saying anything promising, but a nurse or two. And he says, "I'm going to try to not put you on this ventilator." It was ready, stationed at the foot of my bed in that ICU room, and it stayed there. And so he says, "I'm going to see if, in fact, you can tell me how you feel. I'm going to try something different." Now, I must say that before that, the night, all during that night when I was hacking coughing, the nurse on charge for the top of that morning called for a respiratory therapist, and it was like a platoon of them in the room. And some were debating and requesting let's try a breath treatment, a breathing treatment. But the protocol at that time
Yes.
disallowed the respiratory techs from doing it. They said, "Well, he's not wheezing like an asthmatic would, so we can't do it." Well, the first thing this Dr. Rahman in ICU did was order a treatment, a breathing treatment. He says, "I want to dilate your lungs as wide as I can right now and just experiment." He didn't say experiment, or try different medicines as long as you can tell me what you feel.
Yes.
Now, in a more extended interview with a lot more time, I'll explain why I take my time to kind of illustrate those moments. Nevertheless, they got me out of danger with the breathing, trying different things. But they watched me. I do remember it becoming real because he says, "Right now, you're the sickest person in ICU, and I'm going to take my time."
Right.
Good. So I didn't have to go on the ventilator. About 5 days later, I was back into the ward, specialized area for COVID patients. And when they discovered that, hey, the AFib make them pay a little attention to a light murmur, heart murmur that I had for years. And that led to a concert of doctors from Emory and elsewhere, I believe, realizing, hey, we have to do an angiogram, a catheter, to see what's going on inside of your heart. When they took me there to have that done, the doctor in charge there realized this man, he can't go through this. We have to put him to sleep, et cetera, et cetera. I should back up and say what they painted to me that was highly probable, regardless of what the catheter would show, that they were going to have to save my life by doing open heart surgery. All this happened so quickly.
Yeah, I can
So
imagine.
I was at that time just trying to get my lungs clear of the pneumonia that was there, that it had actually collapsed my right lung. So now it's all of a sudden the virus is also eating away at a valve, and the valve is kicking back more blood into your system, and it's keeping us from helping to restore the strength and capacity of your lungs. So it was an emergency open heart surgery. After I got out of ICU from the surgery, I spent another couple of weeks in the hospital. Their biggest fear along the way was blood clotting, which I couldn't relate to because I felt I was in pretty good shape. I felt no discomfort. I never felt any pain ever before either. You hear people talk about excruciating pain. Well, I know nothing ever hurt me other than the barrage of needles and IVs all the time,
Right.
and the pain from the surgery. But even having my lungs in the shape that they were in never was painful, just comforting. So they would every day. I got an injection in my belly for blood clotting. The wraps connected to the machine that pulsates that they put on your legs. I slept with that every night. So if I had to say the number one concern that I've experienced through my entire stay in the hospital, that included the 2 ICU stays, was blood clotting. And they explained what they were seeing about COVID at that time. And I was finally discharged from the hospital June 12th. But what they were seeing is that COVID causes blood clots, that they don't have time nor the advantage of space, given the barrage of patients coming into them, to explore what all of this means and why. It'll be a while before they're able to do that. I was even given, was in a small experimental set of people, apparently in Azura, that were given the antibodies. I think I felt I was still in ICU the first time when that was given to me. And I still think that overall I felt more energy and better the very next morning. They gave it to me in the wee hours of the night. And by sunlight, I felt better. And when I asked the doctor, hey, do you think the antibodies are fixing me? We don't know. It'll be a while, months later, before we know if antibodies and what kind of patterns and rhythms were learned from that process. So that's a synopsis, if you
Wow.
will, of my stay and my discoveries.
So, Roland, you've been through a lot, but clearly you remained strong, and you had good hope of coming out of it strong. And we're so glad that you are talking to us today. And
Yeah.
COVID, COVID has been sort of the talk in the last few months. Um, Canceling so many events in people's lives, the important events, weddings and whatnot, closing some of the businesses. So, Roland, my question to you is why did you decide to go and get tested? Was this something you were having a doubt in your mind, or was it something like a public health issue that everybody needs to get tested?
Very good. So all of my family are in New Orleans, the town of my birth. So for the 30 plus years I've been domiciled in Atlanta. I've frequented going back to my family in New Orleans all during that course of time. I have been very, very careful not to do anything, and I've always been kind of hyper careful about touching and things like that, and being in the space that I was in. So I was essentially shut down here. And I thought, geez, how long am I going to be shut down here? Let me travel home. Let me drive home one time during the whole period of us having to be shut down nationally in different parts at different times. And so I was just planning that trip and saying, let me get tested. so that when family want to see me, they want to congregate for whatever reasons, I can feel a little more responsible, right? So that was the draw for me.
Okay. Okay. So it was just the awareness that everybody had created, that just go get tested, just go get tested to know.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes,
Sounds good.
yeah, yeah.
So,
It wasn't that I was in fear of anything, because I really wasn't, but I felt it was a responsible thing to do, that I'm going
right.
to be running around family, you know. I
Definitely.
couldn't get in to see my mother. She's an Alzheimer's patient, but nevertheless, you know, I wanted to be responsible with my traveling around.
Definitely. So, Roland, tell us that when you said in the hospital, you named a couple of doctors or so, and you said they didn't put you on a ventilator. And again, that was the protocol at that time, and nothing was certain, as because in the outside world, we were all just reading what's happening in the healthcare system. And one of them was the use of hydroxychloroquine and this drug, or a ventilator or no ventilator. So I would say it was courageous of that doctor not to decide. He decided not to use the protocol, which could also mean he went against the protocol. So, and that's fine, right? Because sometimes you need to change the status quo and decide what's the best for the patient.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you know, and further conversation with that particular doctor, it was again what you hear people say to you oftentimes: listen to your body. They become these professionals at cure and healing only because they listen and active and in laboratory ways with methodologies behind them to what the human body tells them. And so he had an opportunity. I guess he was just going with his gut feelings and instincts. Do I have a patient here very sick, in his own words, that I can glean something from, given how he articulates to me what he thinks he's feeling, and that was his driver. That he helped me understand. Um, you know, it's not, I won't say sad, but in the absence of anything else, it was kind of it was profound to see that doctor and the others working so hard. You know, it's a panorama of only eyes.
Yes.
And if you had no other features or senses but your eyes, the human body instinctively compensates. You see more, and the person does more if, in fact, they grow up with one arm, or they grow up
Right.
unable to, or they grow up mute, right? So in those moments, man, you glean a lot from people's eyes. So there was something sincere, puzzling at the same time. You saw fear in eyes, because they didn't know to what extent they might get sick. You know, so the intuition of the moment of saying, "Tell me what you feel," is more profoundly than I could ever express.
Yes.
So, you know, that was the first time that my life was saved. Of course, the second time is when the doctor, Dr. Lou from memory, I was in Wellstar system, but they were coalescing there across hospital campuses. When she says, and it's interesting, Nazir, because you oftentimes would hear doctors right in there in a room with you off to the side in a wall, against the walls, talking about your mortality. And so, you know, doctors started to say, "Hey, what, you're a miracle." One doctor called me an athlete, fought from it. And this doctor says, "Well, you know, well, he's dying, candidly."
Mm.
So it's just a matter of knowing how to approach the angiogram. But after that, she strongly suspected. So that was the second time that I know that my life was saved by people who acted fast, despite the confusion of their realities, and who explored their practice of their profession.
Right. So, Roland, thank you so much for going deep into what you felt, even though from your vision that you said the eyes was what you know, you saw of theirs and of yours for them to see. But what are the things that you've learned, or how are you different now than before the COVID time. What are your, have any of your thoughts or principles of life changed?
Well, absolutely. Um, you you really learn to contextualize fear. So the end result of where I am now is do things that spirit, God, universe, parenting prepare you to do more assertively, if not aggressively, fearing nothing. When I say nothing, I mean not even fearing another human who might work against you for their own enfranchising reasons that they can't express. Set a course, get moving. You're, of course, it was affirming for me as scores of people, well wishers like yourself, prayed and contemplated and petitioned and meditated for my healing, for my life. It is affirming that when I awakened and asked the young nurse, "You guys fix my heart?" And he says, "Yes, you have a brand new valve," realizing that, geez, I've been awakened. My purpose has been reaffirmed. Uh, you often hear people talk like this when they go through a similar set of experiences. Well, that's how I communicate mine.
Very nice, Roland. What do you think is your the top most purpose? We might have many purposes, but what do you think is your top most purpose, if I may?
Yes. So I started a nonprofit with some other business partners some time ago, and it's National Incarceration Association, and it's all around mass incarceration, not just to address mass incarceration in and of itself, but to address some particular factors of causation that we throw money and band-aid remedies, policy remedies at all of our lives from generation to generation, from political term, from cycle to cycle. So to address some things like homelessness and education, to innovate. If I think of an idea, I'm a person who's I'm I'm burdened, if you will, by always thinking through what's obvious. So I'm a social innovator, a strategist in that regard. How can we fix this problem? How can we fix that problem? So it's things with regard to education, things with regard to homelessness, and of course things with regard to mental health and addiction abuse, and thinking of ways to help government solve some of its problems in ways that can be measured, despite the fact that they may or may not feel political will in that moment.
Definitely. And that's something very important to consider, as a continuing effort, Roland. And you hear a lot of political thoughts out there about COVID. And, we started the year 2020 with the 2020 or 2030 vision. And boom, this whole thing happened. And all our vision just got distracted. And we would think at this tough timing, everybody would come together,
Yeah.
work together, think together to resolve. But again, midst of all this, we still continue to see hostility and ideologies being put out there. But leaving all that aside, if you had to speak to youngsters and people, adults, seniors, about the precautionary methods they can take in order to avoid COVID-19, what would you ask them to do?
Yeah. So it's no more than how we took simple precautions when politics wasn't a part of the discourse. I think I cannot be sure unless I got it off of a milk carton on my hands and didn't think before I wiped my face or touched my face. I feel I go back to a gentleman who sat behind me the last time I did fly, who had a progressive cough, and I could feel this before we settled in and got quiet and people stopped talking. And you lean toward the seat and talk, and cough. Now, I had a mask on. It was one of the paper masks that you buy in the store, and things can move about on your skin. I, I'm very, I have cautions in describing that because we don't know. So, to your question and point, remember one, that the people we pay to keep us alive, they don't know. Stop trying to forge a debate of what you think they said. What they said today, they said it differently. They don't know. Allow them the space and time to not know. What does that mean for us? The same things that our parents and grandparents taught. Don't touch as much as you can. Stop touching things because instinctively you're going to touch. You know, if you go to a theater, when you went to a theater, and people around you are coughing because flu season is high, there's outcomes. You did certain things. You know, you didn't shake a hand. You did things. You didn't want to sit next to the person. If you did, you tried to cover up. If you know you had a cough, you tried to do a little. So all of that for me translates, and it's a shame we have to say this, because but we have to, translates into do the responsible thing, do the sensible thing, to keep yourself safe, cover your face as much as you can, try to avoid close contact with individuals as much as you can, uh, try not to travel and move about as much as you can. Um, when you feel that you have something, try to stay to yourself as much as you can until you no longer feel that way. So, I could never say, Nazira, anything more than what you hear articulated in resounding ways all the time. The problem is that individuals in their own defiance as individuals, for whatever moments, in those moments, say, I am not going to. Uh, but if in fact we'd all done the simple thing like that for a window of time, it would have given more Dr. Ramans the latitude to find out from somebody else months before me, who is no longer with us, how do you feel?
Definitely. So that was profound. What I'm hearing from you, Roland, is it's the best for all of us to wear a mask, keep social distancing, touch things less, or keep washing your hands with soap, or with sanitizer. So Roland, I think you're giving a good example. With my medical background, I would imagine a person to think medically, or and anatomically, or physiologically, but it's very hard for us to understand why the person thinks otherwise. But again, this is America. We all have our freedom to thoughts and opinion, but having to listening to you just gives us that clear understanding of you coming with experience. Why should I listen to you? Because of your experience, you spoke to us profoundly on what went through, and there are no answers. So at this time, till we get that answer, specific answer in preventing, let's follow the precautionary methods. To not just, it's not for us; it's to keep others safe as well. Did I
Absolutely.
get that right, Roland?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And remember, fight the urge to align yourself in what feels like a posture in the debate about what's going on. And so, hence, I'll do this again. I never ran a fever ever. I never had pain ever. People are now having to get amputations. They're having so the very first thing you get now as a response to what we're going through is somebody at an institution or a facility or a business. When I go into the doctors now to look after my blood clot, the very first thing is that you put the laser thing to take your temperature, right? And there are some parallels that, hey, if you run a temperature, then hey, you may have, but it's not all the case. So
Definitely.
yeah, so they don't know. Again, Nazira, bless their hearts. That's not an indictment. It's a reality that every responsible human congregating together on any one given the geospace has to share.
Definitely. So, Roland, we want to thank you for the half hour you've spent with us today. We thank you for your wisdom and the knowledge that you've instilled in us. And we hope you continue with your purposes. We are so grateful. I think all your good deeds and your good thoughts, and you're helping all the others, especially the ones who have no voice or who have no strength to fight for themselves, has brought you back to us. This is my feeling, you know.
Yeah,
And I strongly
I
believe
agree.
in I strongly believe in the good deeds, how they keep protecting you from falling again and again. So you are a living testimonial to that, Roland. We wish you all the best. We want you to continue to shed your brightness and light to many things that still need resolutions and answers. So thank you so much, Roland, for spending your time with us. And please stay safe, keep us posted, and we convey our thoughts and special vibes and good wishes to you always.
Well, thank you. The same to you. God bless you. And I hope it was of some good.
Yes, thank you so much, Roland. We'll talk soon.